This video will be discussing the basics of agreement errors and how to fix them. My first example is a case when you have a singular noun as a subject. Generally speaking, when you have a singular noun as a subject, you will add s to the verb. My example here says, Molly owns a dog. So I'm going to go ahead and box the subject and circle the verb. So this would be, instead of saying Molly own a dog, Molly owns the dog. So this rule also applies when you have words like he, she, it, or this as the subject. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing with my example, she owns a dog. I'm going to box the subject, she, and circle the verb. There are certain cases, however, when you would not need an s added to the verb. So in this instant, when two subjects, singular subjects, are joined together by the word and, or something like that, you would not need to add s to the verb. So I'm going to box the subject, and the subject in this case is Molly and Joe. Not just Molly and not just Joe. It's together, Molly and Joe. And I'm going to circle the verb. So Molly and Joe own a dog. So again, there's no s added to the verb because they're talking as a subject being Molly and Joe as they are linked together. Again, the same rule of not using the s applies when the subject is I, you, we, or they. So my example is they own a dog. So I'm going to box the subject and circle the verb. So it's important that you wouldn't say they owns a dog. So it makes sense to say they own a dog, or I own a dog, or we own a dog. So it gets a little bit trickier when words come between the subject and the verb. So again, I think that the process of boxing the subject and circling the verb when you're learning this become very helpful because it's important to realize that only the subject modifies the verb. So my example is Molly and Joe of Texas own the dog. So I'm going to box Molly and Joe because we know that that is the subject like we learned in my previous example. And the verb is own. So that's the correct way to do it, but I've also included a way that might be a little bit more confusing. So in this case, the sentence I included was Molly and Joe of Texas owns the dog. And the thing here that happened was the subject was incorrectly chosen as Texas owns the dog. And that's not correct. The subject is Molly and Joe. So it's correct that Molly and Joe own the dog. Texas does not own the dog. Wouldn't make sense. So I think when you're learning this, it's important, to practice with a couple sentences to make sure that you're only letting the subject modify the verb. So there are a couple other cases like indefinite pronouns such as nobody, one, anybody, or everybody, and generally they have an s added to the verb when they are the subject. So my sentence is nobody owns a dog except for Molly and Joe. So, yeah, it would be the same case. Everybody owns a job except for me. So, thank you for watching, and I hope this